I am so pleased to be joined by Jennifer Coffey today. How are you, Jen?
I'm great, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Now, to the loyal viewers of QVC, Jennifer needs no introduction. She just capped off a 13-year run as a program host.
Yeah.
Oh, God bless you. I caught one of your last shows where you hosted Coldplay when they debuted Moon Music. That must have been a trip.
How about ending your 13 years on about the highest note possible, right? Never would I have imagined that would happen. And I dream pretty big. So that was a big wow from the universe.
So cool. In addition to program host, you're also a speaker, a coach. You just founded the Phoenix podcast recently. Great information on there that we'll get to. And you're also a best life motivator, which is, I love that moniker. It's a great, thing to have because it's intriguing and it's better than just saying manifestation coach. You know what I mean?
Sure. It's it's actually I feel all encompassing enough that you kind of get the gist, right? But is a different approach to traditional self-improvement, which implies that you're kind of lacking something and you got to fix it, right? We need to be improved. And in 2025, that's actually the last thing that most of us need to do. Instead, it is shifting the mindset to one of appreciating the life and the person that you are right now, while still giving yourself permission to crave more, to want more, and to realize that you can achieve higher realities no matter where you are right now. So it's a lot and it's generic, but I think we could all use a repositioning of how we view our lives as always needing to get better, when that's a wonderful thing to want. But if it implies that what you have right now is less than what you deserve, then that can be inaccurate because we all are deserving of so much more.
Wow. I like how you put that because I think that pertains particularly to actors and performers, which is what this podcast is geared toward, because it's always about reacting to what auditions are coming in and getting it just right and pining for that job. It can be really difficult because it's always about, we're trained to think we have to be a star.
Yeah.
It's not good enough just to perform. We have to be stars. And that creates pressure that is just, not to trivialize it, but it can be devastating.
No, it shouldn't be trivialized. And I appreciate that you use that language. Devastating, intimidating. It can be, no matter how great or how high your self-confidence is, you are put to task to dig deep and find more of it. I like to think, and I speak not as an actress, I tried my hand at that for about 6 months and realized I was not of that breed necessarily. But when I put myself in the shoes of, and I work with a lot of great actors, I feel like this group was dealing with what so many of us are dealing with now in the world of social media. So if you are an influencer, you're just putting yourself out there in any way, you're an author, you're a speaker, you are on such a global platform now that we didn't have even 10 years ago. But actors literally are the most vulnerable people putting themselves out there and getting the most brutal feedback on a day-to-day basis and having to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and get right back to it, right? And most of us, non-actors, get a taste of what that's like when you put a thought out there and you're just, beaten down by comments and naysayers online. But that you can switch on and off, right? Making this your absolute career and who you are, and still holding on to that belief that you are good at what you do and capable and deserving of the very best. I mean, that's a workout. That's a mental workout. And so that, I think, is where understanding manifestation and the law of attraction, which I always come back home to, understanding that can be a fantastic tool in your toolkit as you are in this very thankful atmosphere.
Absolutely. And can we just break down manifestation? Most people probably have a nebulous definition of it.
Yep,
Law
very
of attraction,
woo-woo.
whatnot. Very woo-woo indeed. Can we break it down more practically to define it basically as energy alignment?
Absolutely.
We match our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions to what it is that we want, and the challenge is to do this in spite of what the physical world is telling us.
Yes, you actually summarized it beautifully. It is very little more than, actually, when you boil it down, matching your thoughts, your actions, your feelings, especially, to that of the life you intend to live. Only you're doing all of this now. So that very nebulous side of it, which of course, social media and marketing and media love to take anything that catches fire and turn it into that which it is not, usually that which is quickest to make a buck, right? So over time, what was a very literary concept that was written about and like archaic lectures that you can find grainy, audio of from decades ago has become fake it till you make it, or, believe it and achieve it. And as simple as that. And when you break it down, I guess technically it can be as simple as that, but you lose a lot of the real magic. And by magic, I don't mean anything that can't actually be scientifically proven, because we can do that too. But what feels like miracles happening in your life. So, case in point, the way I got the job at QVC had almost nothing to do with my on-paper expertise. I had a total of maybe 30 minutes behind or in front of a camera or behind a microphone in radio. And it was learning about the law of attraction that made me realize that if I simply started moving forward in my life as though this were the career that I had before I had it, that I would get the job. Now, in simple terms, that is exactly what happened. But when we shift to looking at it beyond just New Age concepts and faith, which I firmly believe is a huge part of it, if we want to look at it purely from a scientific perspective, we can have lengthy conversations about quantum physics that will put everybody to sleep and make our brains hurt. But quantum physicists love talking about, if you're aware of Schrödinger's cat and how the reality shifts based on the perception of the person outside of it. All you're doing is retraining your brain to expect what it is you intend, and doing that over and over again until it is impossible for you to do anything else other than notice opportunities when they arrive. If I were to tell you, Paul, when you leave the studio today and you go to do whatever you're going to do tonight, you can go to the grocery, you're going to go out to dinner, whatever. When you get in the car and you're driving on the highway, you will be astounded how many green cars you're going to see. Like, it's going to be weird. And if I told you that and you went, okay, green cars, whatever you say, Jen, tell me what's going to happen when you get in your car and you drive to the restaurant tonight. You're going to see green cars everywhere. Now, that's not because more green cars were summoned by Jen Coffey to get on the highways to make you think I'm, using some kind of mind control device on you. It's because your reticular activating system in your brainstem was programmed, if you will, to notice the green cars. You see this happen when you decide to buy a certain car and you see them on the highway, or you're planning a trip to France and you see all these, references to Paris. And oh my gosh, I went shopping and there were these Eiffel Tower keychains. It's like God wants me to go to Paris, right? Your brain knows that you're going to Paris and it's seeking out reminders, opportunities. It's thinking Paris, so you see Paris. So when we shift our perspective to expect, even if a lot of evidence is telling us otherwise, that it ain't going to happen. When you start to meditate on, expect, act as if, and be grateful for what you intend, you will see more opportunities, you will act on more opportunities, and it begins this beautiful upward spiral of what at the time I saw as miracles, right? And if we want to go down that road, I can talk about, the universe and, source energy and how you are co-creating your reality. That's more a potential, spiritual and religious conversation. But even if we extract as much of that out of the conversation as we can, and we talk about pure science, it really is just training your brain to see more of what you want to create so that you yourself are a better creator.
Do you think that along those lines that it comes down to people not realizing they have power?
Absolutely.
Or they don't want the power? They don't want responsibility?
Sure. I mean, all of that is potentially true of anybody. When I coach people on manifestation and I explain this concept, often they think that they're, okay, now I can manifest, right? Well, that's true, but you've always been manifesting. Anybody with self-awareness and free will is manifesting. You are, everyone who's listening has been doing it since they were at least old enough to think independent thoughts. What most of us are manifesting, though, is whatever. We wake up in the morning and we go, I hope I'll have a good day. Or maybe I'll get that gig. Or maybe he'll text back, right? And we think that and just kind of go, I hope fate wants to give me a good day today. Well, if that's the energy that you're putting out, 50-50, could be good, could be bad, guess what you're going to get in return? 50-50. Some days are good, some days are bad. Because you're kind of all over the place just putting it out there that anything could happen. Some days are great. You get that promotion. You have that euphoric high from something that, she said yes. And then some days are just garbage, right? But when you begin to intend, amazing opportunities are coming my way. Well, you'll be shocked simply when you truly start to believe that in your bones. And this is the hard part, right? Because there's ego and there's reasoning and logic and all of these things that are mentally trying to keep us safe and protected, but often keep us from opportunities. When you program your brain to override those, then I'm telling you, things just start falling out of the sky.
So we get in our own way.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And people have to realize that the antenna, the radio frequency is always on. It's always transmitting.
Absolutely.
It's a question of what our energy is and how we're blocking what we want or what we're mirroring, what the universe is mirroring back to us based on our vibe.
And that you said it yourself, that there are different versions of these obstacles. So it often is that we feel we don't deserve it, right? One of my favorite law of attraction lecturers and speakers is a man named T. Harv Eker. And he speaks purely on the monetary abundance side of law of attraction. So, of course, lots of ears are attuned to that, right? Because everybody wants to use this to get more money, and I don't blame them, right? And he talks about your money thermostat. So you have, because of your upbringing, your well-intentioned parents could be the ones who conditioned you to this. Media is always and often a bad actor in this one. Clergy, teachers, anybody who had an impact on you, train you when you're a child. And I think of my own father who was, a blue collar worker. We had very little means and this was his language often, right? We can't afford it. Money doesn't grow on trees. You got to work hard to earn it. All well-intentioned to keep me from going broke and being in debt when I'm in my teens. But I'm conditioned to think, boy, I'm lucky if I can make any money. So he does this mental exercise with his audiences where he says, write down an amount of money that you think would be really amazing to have, like per year. And when I first heard him say this was many years ago, and I was like, well, I think it'd be pretty amazing to have $200,000 a year. So I wrote down $200,000. And he said, okay, great, you have your number. Now add a zero to it. So I added a zero to it. When I looked at it, I thought, okay, And he said, however you reacted when you wrote down that extra zero is your money thermostat. So if you look at $2 million a year and think, fat chance of that happening, or if I win the lottery, that right there is your obstacle staring you in the face. That mindset that you have had over 10, 20, 30, 50, 70 years. And I use that as an example to explain to people that we have that thermostat for a lot of things. What we deserve in love, what we deserve in career, what we could potentially have in our freedom to travel, to do the things that we love. We're preconditioned to think that there's a ceiling, and the only way to get past that ceiling is winning the Powerball or some kind of outlandish miracle happening. And when you change that thermostat to believe that literally there is no ceiling and anything is possible, it takes time. But when you train your brain to believe that absolutely, I can win the Powerball. Absolutely, I can find the man of my dreams. Absolutely, I can win that Oscar. And when you start to say it to yourself and your brain starts to go, yeah, you're right, that's the shift. Mm-hmm. And when that shift happens, which is earlier for some, it's never for a lot of people. And that's sad, but it is what it is. And, whenever that happens, be ready and get ready. And that's another key part of manifesting, which is preparing your life, preparing your space in advance for what you want.
Thank you for that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because I listened to your first Phoenix podcast episode where you basically explained your story. Take me back to the QVC email came in to audition to be a program host more than once. You finally did it. You come up to Westchester, you do the audition, you take the tour of the building, and then you go home.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated by the point in the story when you get home and then you and your daughter start packing up the house.
Mm-hmm.
And you waited 6 weeks.
The longest 6 weeks of my life. Yeah.
Please take me into your mindset at that time. Were you thinking that you were crazy, that this is BS? Like, I must be nuts. Take me into your mindset, please.
Yeah. Well, all of the above were true, right? And
Okay.
in fits and flashes. Yes. And, when I do tell the story to people and I like play it back out loud, I'm like, man, that was crazy, girl, that you did all that,
Right.
But I genuinely believe that for most people, when they figure out that this stuff works, their first manifestation is often, it's a biggie, because you switch on this completely new way of approaching life and what you intend, and it comes to you with such force. So to put it in a nutshell, and yes, if you want to listen to the Phoenix podcast, available on all platforms, the first episode gives you all the deets. But I had just finished watching The Secret. Many of you listening probably have read it or seen the documentary. And that was an eye-opener for me. And I highly recommend it because Rhonda Byrne, who is the author of it, does an amazing job of really just making it simple to understand how law of attraction works without excessive woo-woo terminology that tend to turn a lot of people off. And after I listened to it, I was like, wait, so it really doesn't cost anything extra. I'm just changing the way I think and act, and it might actually work. So why the heck not, right? I mean, I was literally almost completely broke and, had just shut down several businesses that I had in the face of the 2008 recession, and was at a real crossroads where it was either go back to working for other people in retail, which would have put food on my plate, but frankly made me miserable, or I could kind of take a risk and move forward in what I really wanted to do, which was television. So I thought, well, okay, let me apply it to this and see if it works, right? So I start putting little cards all over the house that say, I love my job in television. I meditate on what it would feel like to be in front of a camera in a freezing cold studio and dressed up, about to 3, 2, 1. And I would get dressed in the morning as though I were going to my job in TV, even though technically I was unemployed and had nowhere I needed to be that day. But I would walk around the grocery store, picking up the groceries in my mind, pretending that anybody could approach me at any time and ask me about, what it's like to be in TV. So that began, what I realized after the fact was that was training my brain to be open to this possibility. So that when I did get the emails, and a lot of your listeners, if they're actors, like they're signed up to casting notifications and they get emails all the time. But Jen Coffey pre The Secret would see that QVC email and just poo-poo it because I didn't have the resume. And indeed, the first couple of times it came through my email box, I did delete it because I was still in that process of learning to be open to anything being potentially mine. And it was after the third time that I saw that in my email. I was like, wait, I'm doing this wrong. Like it's there. Here's an opportunity. If I'm acting as if I have it, why the hell wouldn't I submit an audition? So I went to a friend's house and I recorded myself selling a crock pot and a tank top. And I sent the audition reel off. I didn't know it at the time, but I was like 2 hours shy of the deadline to submit it. I got a phone call a couple days later. They wanted to fly me up to Westchester to do the audition. Again, didn't realize that I had surpassed all the multiple layers of auditioning that had happened before. Apparently they thought it was good. I went to QVC. I did the audition. Anytime they would ask, hey, who wants to go first? Even though my hand was shaking, I would raise my hand every time and go, I'll go first. Because if this stuff works, I'm supposed to just go through it as though I already have the job, right? And if I already have the job, then it doesn't matter if I go first. Like, it's just a formality, right? Now, internally, I'm peeing myself almost with fear, but, hey, that's what I'm supposed to do because that's what The Secret says. We toured the building, as you mentioned, and all of the other women who were auditioning were taking pictures of the studio. And as much as I wanted to show Gabby, my daughter, pictures, I didn't take pictures because if I have the job, it would be pointless. My phone's going to be full of pictures of the studio. So I didn't take pictures. And when I got back, even though I had no reason on paper to believe that I had the job, because it's not like they told you that you had the job yet, I knew that I was supposed to act as if. So my 11-year-old daughter and I packed up everything in that house except for a little bit of food in the pantry and enough outfits to go to school for a week or so for her. And even though I was told it would take 2 weeks to hear back, as you mentioned, it took 6 weeks. So yes, Paul, there were times where I found myself in fits of tears and fear, wondering if I had kind of gambled, a lot of time that could have been spent applying for meh jobs. And the only comfort that I really found in moments like that, knowing that I had to get myself out of it as quick as possible, but knowing also that this is not toxic positivity and denial, it's learning these new emotions and what to do with them as you're going through this process of believing that you are worth what you want. The solace that I found was in kind of running through the worst case scenario one time and taking this to its logical worst case scenario would be, okay, you end up going back to something that you don't like to do and you're putting food on the table again. Like your worst case scenario is not that you are homeless. Your worst case scenario is not that you're dying of a grave illness or that you've lost your daughter or something terrible, right? The worst case scenario is quiet desperation, right? And that I can get myself out of. So running myself through that worst case scenario helped me to hit the reset button and come back to, okay, now how else can I prepare for this job happening? Mm-hmm. And I continued to meditate on this. I continued to, every night before I went to bed, I would daydream about what it would be like to get the phone call that I got the job. And I would imagine that Jack, the man who was going to hire me, that he would call while Gabby and I were watching TV. So I had the whole scenario in my head. And I would answer the phone and he would say, "Hey, Jen, we're really sorry about the wait, but we'd love for you to join the team at QVC." And I would imagine that before I went to bed so vividly that it would put tears in my eyes, the good kind. And I imagined that for 6 weeks straight until one night, Gabby and I were watching TV and I already had the QVC phone number programmed in my phone to say congratulations on it. So that when the phone rang, it would say congratulations.
Wow. Wow.
I got extra with it. The phone rang and I looked at it and it said congratulations. So I grabbed Gabby's hand and I said, "This is it, babe. It's okay no matter what." And I answered it and it was Jack. And he said verbatim, "Hey, Jen, we're really sorry about the wait, but we'd love for you to join the team at QVC." And after a couple of minutes of pretending like this was just any old phone call, "Thanks, Jack. That's great. I'm really looking forward to it. That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, human resources will come. Okay, cool. Drug tests. I'm on it. Okay. Thank you. Bye." Hung up the phone and just screamed at the top of my lungs, "It works." And Gabby and I just giggled and cried for about an hour after that. So again, a very long answer to your question, but yeah, I thought I was crazy a couple times.
So I think there's two parts to this. The first part, and I think I got this from Esther Hicks one time, where she said through the entities of Abraham, she's a channeler, you have to get so comfortable with being satisfied with the thought, with the feeling, that you don't care if it manifests. And then supposedly, if you get to that point, then it has no choice but to manifest. That's another way of describing the law of attraction.
Yes, absolutely. Another quote, I can't tell you where it's from, but it's like, when you feel like it's on its way, it's on its way. Like when you start to, yes, you still hold on to the like, wow, when it happens, it's going to be so great. And that is jet fuel for it to show up. But you will actually catch yourself using the present tense about things that are not present yet. And almost like, oh, I got to explain to somebody why I just said, well, when I moved to Pennsylvania, and they're going, "What do you mean?" Oh, no, I'm manifesting it, right? And it sounds crazy, but it's not. If you place an order for something online, you go to Amazon, you order something, you just know it's coming. Like, it's no big deal. Or if it's a big item, you make sure you have the space in your house for it because you ordered it. You don't order it every single day. And you don't question whether or not it's going to show up. In fact, you get impatient when it doesn't show up. Well, if it's Amazon, 24 hours, right? But the key there is that expectation and the preparation. So, if you really want new curtains in your house, you hate the ones that you have, but the ones that are there are hanging, it's probably going to take you forever. If you tore those down and the whole neighborhood can see you, eventually you're going to figure out a way to get new curtains. And that's a very simplistic way of putting it. But when you start making that space in your life for it, your brain becomes uncomfortable. And it's like, oh, shit, I don't have the curtains yet, and it will start to remind you to go to websites to shop for curtains and you're going to, when you manifest that you want that acting job that's going to, take care of all the bills for a full year, then you start preparing your schedule, your life, you're calling your agent and really, like maybe more often than you do. And what are the things that you can do now to prepare for it to show up that don't jeopardize your health or your future? It's not quitting your job and moving to another country and abandoning your family. It is, okay, if I want to travel, do I have my passport yet? Well, if you're going to travel and it's going to land in your lap, you know how long it takes to get a passport? Get the passport, right? Start doing the things that you can do now that cost little to nothing, including the thoughts that you have, which you don't even have to let friends and family know about. But those things that you can do, whether you can see it affecting your future or not, they have a frequency and an energy, and they cause new neurons to fire and connect in your brain to accelerate you towards what you want.
Sure. And that's the second part of the equation too. More practically speaking, like for example, when you got back home in week 4 and week 5, what kept you from unpacking those boxes was looking at the facts. And the facts were that you still were going to have a roof over your head. You could still eat. And I think that kind of calms the rational mind down.
For sure.
To keep going with the manifestation work.
Yeah. Your brain, you can break it down to a lot of very simple things that it does that dates back to when we were cavemen and women. And one of those is fight or flight. It's fear. And fear is, a very powerfully negative force. But if we just look at it from a scientific approach, it's there to make sure you don't die. So if a big bear busts into our studio right now and comes lurching for us, if we didn't have fear, we'd be dead within seconds. But you have that instinct, oh, I got to get out of here. Well, we're not running from bears anymore, but that fear is still there. And it wants, ego, the very logical part of your brain, wants to keep you safe. Now, safe means I don't die, I don't starve. But unfortunately, in 2025, where that fear is still a strong thing and there are very few immediate threats, it's still working. It wants you to stay right where you are. Your ego is very happy, like wherever you're listening to us right now. If you sit there, you don't move, make sure you eat, you drink, but if you don't do anything else, ego is doing its job. It's keeping you alive so that you can reproduce and keep the species going. It's also the same force that keeps you from adventuring and trying new things. There's a reason why when you go ziplining, there's a part of you going, what the hell am I doing, right? And it's that part that wants to keep you safe. Well, if you are in a job that is not ideal, but it is feeding you, we all kind of go, well, I'm not starving. There are a lot of people who are starving. And, maybe I can find pleasure in other ways. As long as I've got this, I'm good. And eventually that drives us insane because especially as creatives, the audience who's listening, we can't wrap our head around that. That feels like death, right? To unplug that creative side of us. But fear is really strong and vocal, right? So in those moments of fear like I had, it is perfectly natural and logical to look for, logical affirmations of how, even in that worst case scenario, it's not that bad. And for evidence that it is working, right? Every little sign that you get that this is working out for you is encouragement to keep on going. If none of this worked for anybody, then we wouldn't still be talking about it centuries after it was given the name law of attraction. So there's a lot of like little nuggets and hacks that I love to give people that help them stay on that track when it does seem like it's insurmountable. But in the end, when you are able to decipher and identify fear for what it really is, which isn't most of the time logic, and it is purely keeping you safe, then you can override it and go, thank you, noted, that you want me to stay in this 9-to-5 job that I don't like, but that's not how we're going to do things. We're going to do things like this. And so it is kind of like this internal conversation, the higher self, the higher part of you, talking to the monkey mind, talking to the part that just wants to make sure that you're fed and that you have babies and that you keep the species going.
And all of this has been under the umbrella of action, whether it's thinking the thoughts, imagining, acting as if. I think it's a good time right now to talk about surrender. And this tripped me up for the longest time. I think it's an often misunderstood concept. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can't control everything. So is it about just trusting the process? It's not about not caring, but it's about trusting. And is it our job to match the frequency and not focus on an outcome?
I would suggest almost the opposite, which is focusing purely on the outcome.
Okay.
And not focusing on the how. So in my mind, how is a 4-letter word, because when you begin to wonder, how is it going to work? How am I going to get the money? How am I going to convince this person that I'm not crazy and that what I want, I'm deserving of? How can I get that QVC job when I don't have the resume? When you are lingering on the how, the what if, the but, when you're lingering on that, you are sending out the signal that you're the only one in control of this, right? And that's what most of us have been doing all our lives. I love to say women in particular, because we spin so many different plates, right? And it's like, well, nobody else will do it, so I got to do everything. And while that in, case by case basis might be the case, when it comes to achieving big things, and this can hurt our egos when you hear it, but your control over this is actually really small. You are a co-creator of your life. This is true whether you are a Christian, a Buddhist, Islam, whatever your Judaism, you and higher power, source energy, God, whatever you want to call it, pure energy if you are an atheist, right? Just the glue that holds my butt to the chair, right? Whatever it is that is the strongest force that exists is doing the lion's share of the work. And it is taking instruction to some degree from you. And if that instruction is, I'll take whatever, then you're going to get whatever. Surrender, as most of us think of it, is, let go and let God, right? And it's a beautiful saying, but it leaves out, okay, well, how much am I letting go, right? Am I just sitting on my chair and waiting for the money to fall in my lap? Of course not. Instead, your work, your job is to know the outcome that you desire and to expect it. That literally is the extent of your work, with the addition for bonus points of being grateful for it before you get it. So when you ignite that intention with gratitude and appreciation for what you have now, right down to, Paul and I talked about this in the podcast, but right down to, let's take this for example, the fact that we live in an age that we have technology where you and I can have this conversation, beautiful as it is, even if we hit end and nobody hears it, right? I'm grateful for that. The fact that potentially people will hear this and be re-energized in their pursuit. I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful for this microphone that's going to help, my words to convey clearer. I'm grateful that this little heater at my feet just kicked in because I'm cold. I won't be cold. I'm grateful that I have clean water to drink. Infusing it with that gratitude, that's your work now. And that's what's so beautiful about this. A lot of people try to find some kind of catch, and then here comes the part where she wants $5,000. No. Like, oh, here comes the part where, oh, by the way, I also got the job because my dad's a talent agent. Nope. It really is just know the final outcome, expect it, and be grateful. And everything else is your partnership with higher power. So you're doing the work of listening to that new part of your brain that's looking for opportunities, acting on them when your instinct goes, hey, wait a minute. There's a reason I got this QVC email 3 times. You're doing the work on your end by being aware and acting when it feels right. And everything else is no longer your job. And that truly is where the surrender comes in, right? Because we go, what do you mean? Yeah, I'm supposed to always be killing myself to get no pain, no gain. I'm supposed to always be miserable. And then there's the payoff. Well, I got news for you. It's actually supposed to be easy. And when it's easy, think about when you're in the zone. If you're an actor listening right now, you're a singer, and there's a part where you would do it for free. And you feel almost connected to God when you're in your work. You can do it all day. You don't understand how people are nervous doing this because you could just do it all day. That is when you're truly connected to higher power. It's supposed to be easy. And so it's like when you learn about it, you have permission to not be so stressed about it anymore. And it's hard. I mean, depending on how old you are, I'm 50 now. It's 50 years of being trained that I'm supposed to be worried about everything. And when truth comes along and tells you that's the hard road, why are you taking the hard road when the easy road's right over here?
I'm right behind you. I'll be 49 in July.
Ah, there you go.
Trust me, I'm in the thick of trying to heal core wounds. I'm doing somatic exercises.
I love it. You're doing the work. Yeah.
There's therapy. There's been decades of meditation now. So trust me.
You're opening the channels.
Yes,
you're opening those channels so that it doesn't feel so blocked of, oh, this is baloney. What if it doesn't work? What this is. And that's ego going, man, this is tough. We don't like tough,
Mm-hmm.
And, that I think is another kind of jet fuel that you can add to this process is getting to know and love yourself and giving yourself permission to have this be easy.
That's the thing. It being easy is such a foreign concept to our brain, to my brain at least. I grew up in a blue collar town, blue collar parents, and from the time my mother sat me down after kindergarten watching The Price is Right and Card Sharks, I knew I wanted to give this a shot, but I let decades go by before I did anything about it. It's difficult, and I'm still giving myself permission to do what I'm doing for a living.
I get it.
Now, it's taken all this time. It's taken all of this work of meditating and acting as if to finally give myself the gumption to say, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. And to leave, which for me at the time at QVC was 11 years full time.
That's great.
And to be able to look my parents in the eye and say, I'm going to go because I'm following the breadcrumb trail of my excitement, which is leading me to this. So if I truly enjoy this, then how can it go wrong? How can it be bad?
Absolutely. Again, it's that upward spiral. And that actually brings up another obstacle, I guess, that people encounter, which is their own friends and family. And again, I'm not disparaging, your family as you're telling them about your dream, but they had questions, I'm sure. And that can be an inhibitor to us to that growth or that exploration, because then you feel like, I got to explain myself to my partner, my siblings, my best friends. And I absolutely encountered that when I was, when I was taking that, like even after I got the job, I had family members going, well, what if you get there and they don't like you? Then you'd have to turn around and come back. Now, when you hear that, it's almost like, how dare somebody say that? But then you go, no, I get it, right? Because they're protecting their kid, they're protecting their friend. You're a single mom about to take your middle school daughter across the country. Congrats on getting the job. What if they hate you? And if they hate you, and I had to go, if they hate me, I come back and I start over. Like, it's, again, taking it to that logical worst case scenario and going, even then, took her on an adventure. We had a great experience. Failure is what builds success in the end. And so it helps to arm yourself. I don't mean in the confrontational way, but be ready, because when you are growing and discovering who you really are, there are people who will celebrate you. There are people who will, with good intentions, try to protect you and come up with reasons why you shouldn't. And then there are also, frankly, the bad actors, whether they know it or not. They're intimidated by your success. They feel abandoned a little bit or betrayed because you had that in common. You had the struggle in common. And when you're not struggling anymore, they feel as though, you've betrayed them. And when I say that out loud, you kind of go, that makes no sense. But to them, it does. And to know in advance that that is actually a sign that you're on the right track does help. It doesn't make the conversation less uncomfortable or the disappointment any less when somebody you really thought was, a cheerleader of yours really was just low-key hoping that you failed. But knowing that that is actually one of the many signs that you're on the right track can help you as you're going along this path.
It's so funny you mention that, because I think as it pertains to actors, there's this crabs in a bucket mentality among us when we book work versus not booking work. It's so, honestly, it's a weird dynamic that I don't understand. I remember several occasions in the course of my career when I booked a big job, and the time came when the footage came out and I threw it on social media, and family and friends not in the business were quick to applaud. But the people around me in my acting circles, fellow actors, curious.
Silent.
So-and-so didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. She didn't say anything. Like, damn.
Yeah. And that brings up another great, tip, which is be aware when that happens and what that means for the dynamic of your relationship to that person, but also what is the lesson for you when the roles are reversed, right? So if you are truly manifesting a big role and someone that you know gets the big role, you're actually being shown by higher power evidence of what you want existing and happening for people. It can happen to them, it can happen to you. So for example, I think Rhonda Byrne uses the car, like the car is an easy one. So if you really want this super sexy, expensive car and you see it on the highway and your first response is, good for them. If that's your response, that's the sign that you're sending out. The universe doesn't care if the energy you're giving out is negative or positive. It's just interpreting it as like, just the facts, ma'am. And if you see that car and your response is negative, you're pushing it away. So all of these people who are seeing you getting that great role and either not responding or more likely, which is good for him, they just send out the energy of not getting future roles. You're throwing in advance all the time your future. You're forecasting it. And if you're throwing out, good for him, well, guess what? It's going to be plenty good for you because they're certainly not getting that role. So the lesson then is when the tables turn, because I'm sure that happens too, you see your colleague, somebody landed the great, gig, catch yourself. What is your initial response? And don't berate yourself if the initial response is disappointment or even anger because you didn't get it. Instead, it's, man, how does that feel for them? They must feel so good. And I can't wait because I'm going to feel that good and better. And soak yourself in the feeling of what that's like to get it, as opposed to soaking yourself in the feeling, the doom scrolling of constant I mean, all you're doing, especially in the context of social media, if all you're doing is feeling bad, oh my gosh, you're spending your time manifesting a negative future. And here is your instruction, easy and free, on how to break that chain.
So could we go as far as to say that if actors truly enjoy acting, if they truly in their bones love performing, then they have no choice but to be successful, because we do our jobs in spite of everything. Like if we look at this just practically, we should be, frankly, institutionalized. Because I tell people it's my job to look for a job. And people look at me like I have three heads. Because we audition and look for work way more than we actually work.
Right.
So it makes me wonder, I think actors have to ask themselves, is this truly about you having to perform, that it's in your bones that you have to express that? Or is this about being noticed, being applauded? Is this about ego?
Right.
Well, I think that's a hard question for actors to answer.
It is. And I can't make a sweeping statement about what that means for every individual. Right. So it's, I think what you pose is a really great thought exercise for anyone who's listening. Really, when we get to the heart of it, the easy analogy that I use is the Powerball. So if you win the Powerball, whatever it is right now, it's $500 million. After taxes, you got $200 million. Okay, you are set. So we all love to talk about what we're going to do when we win the Powerball. And it's, I donate a bunch of money, me personally, to animal shelters and animal welfare. And I, make sure my daughter's taken care of, set up an account for her. I'd travel the world with my husband. Okay, that's all lovely. And of course you would. Then what? Because if you keep doing that, you'll run out of money. So after you come home and you have your lovely home, are you sitting by the pool all day eating bonbons? Because that sounds like death to me, right? Like you're going to do something. Now, I can tell you right now that if I won the Powerball, I would still be doing this because I love so much encouraging people and having them go, you're right, and this is what I want, and dreaming big and making vision boards. And then they come and they tell me their stories about how, man, I would do that no matter how much money I had. If you would still act, perform, volunteer at a playhouse, have your own podcast, if you would do that regardless, I think that's a pretty good litmus test for if you are pure in your intention of what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make money doing what you love. And so don't, beat yourself up about that. But if you're questioning whether or not that is your highest, best life, that's a good kind of like easy thought exercise, I think, to do. When I was looking for jobs in television, I would have done it for free. I can say that now because I've left QVC. Otherwise, they, might change my paycheck, right? But I would have done it for free because I felt like I was good at it. I had this rush when I was doing it. I love extemporaneous speaking and not knowing what's going to come out of my mouth. I'm weird that way. And I would have just done it for whatever. So I think that's a good, am I aligned? Is this really what I want to do? Or am I just, putting my energy in the wrong place and hating this more and more, right? And if that's the case, it's probably time for some real self-reflection there. But I would the only caution I would kind of go back regarding what you said was, and this is for everyone listening, turn on your listening ears when you are talking yourself. So if you are saying things like, my full-time job is looking for a full-time job, or, I can't believe I have to spend this much money to submit auditions or to get these headshots, or, and even jokingly, right? My on my business cards, you just say, always looking for work or something. When you're saying that, even in jest, those words have power. And, not to beat anybody up, because we do that all day long. Can you believe this administration? We're saying things and putting it out there. And I'm not saying you bury your head in the sand. But having a thought has 1 degree of energy. Putting it in words has even more energy. And feeling it is the highest level of energy. And when you say something, it's usually attached to a feeling. So if you're doing that, that's the energy you're putting behind. So in safe spaces, like people who kind of understand what you're doing or maybe understand the law of attraction, it's, I love that. This could really be the big one. Or I can't wait. But before the end of the year, I'm going to have that dream gig. I'm going to have that dream job. Give it a deadline. And people who get it, like my daughter doesn't even blink an eye when I say, when I'm a multimillionaire, she's like, yep, when you're a multimillionaire, find those people, your own personal, if you were chairman of the board, who's your board, and I mean, for heaven's sakes, you're an actor. So role play it, for God's sake, only role play it with your actual emotion. Now you are, what's the term when you're acting all the time, like the role, even when you're not in front of the camera? You're
method acting.
Thank you. You're a method actor, only you're method acting your future. Right.
Some would say that's voluntary psychosis, but that's a different conversation.
You know what? The next time somebody asks me, tell me about this law of attraction, I'll be like, let me tell you about voluntary psychosis, because that's what it is. And you know what? I got no problem. People who think it's crazy. I have people ask me, is this witchcraft? And I go, no, it's not. If you want to call it that, okay. But actually it is so deeply spiritual and beautiful and positive. And I think it's one of those mental shifts that really just don't have any negative signs to it, because the worst that could happen is you've put yourself in a better mood throughout the day. The worst that can happen is you start to notice more things to be grateful for. The worst that can happen is you've now dreamed up a bigger dream than the one you had before, and you've raised the bar. Even if everything I said was a bunch of baloney, and none of this ever, I was lying about the QVC thing. It turns out I have a broadcast communications degree, which I don't. But even if all of that is true, the worst that happened was you feel better. We win, So that's what I love about this. No one's asking you to convert to a different faith or donate money that you'll never see again. It's just believe it, expect it, be grateful for it. And the bonus is that's not just the minimum of what's going to happen. What's going to happen is your dreams are going to come true. You can thank me later.
Do you think this is hard for people who are realists because they like to have their opinions and the what isness of the world stick to them, and that kind of clouds what they believe can or can't happen?
I think it's difficult for pessimists, or, I think it's difficult for people who are very, and look, I'm not so dismissive as to realize, because yes, I was in a very challenging situation when I first realized that this could happen, but I still had a roof over my head and I wasn't $1 million in debt. So, people who are particularly challenged, people who are in a very serious medical crisis and are, learning about the law of attraction, I totally understand if they go, oh, so I'm just supposed to think my way out of being sick. The answer is, technically, some people have, right? Placebo effect is a real thing. But nobody who really understands law of attraction is going to suggest that you abandon all science and just believe yourself well. What they do suggest is you let, the pharmacy that is making your medication, the doctor who is diagnosing you, the radiologist who is analyzing your result, you let them do their job. Your job is to expect to get better. So you're not flying solo, you have your team. But rather than sitting and worrying, well, what if the medicine doesn't work? What if I get weaker? What if this? What if that? What if that? Turn those what ifs instead. What if I'm better by the end of the year? What if these results come back and they're so much better than the last time? Use the same tool that you have to create a better reality and to expect a better reality. But to answer your question, absolutely. People who, if you're bound and determined to not believe this, I wish you the best, and I don't need anybody necessarily or personally to understand or to enact it. I hope you do. Mm-hmm. But if you are purely, like, let's say you are, even atheists are very active, law of attractors. It's no matter what your belief system or lack thereof is, if you rely on nothing else, science will prove that this works too. And that's there are many discussions, by the way, of how it works at a very, a submolecular level. And, all I have to do is say placebo effect and people go, oh yeah, that works. Well, why does it work? And it works because your brain can actually heal yourself. It can change your way of thinking. It can open your eyes to different things when you instruct it to. So I would say if you really do call yourself purely a realist, there are plenty of reasons why you should still understand and believe and know that this works. If you just don't want to, I wish you the best.
Yeah. And for those that are interested in the science angle of it, I would invite them to check out Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yes, 100%.
Really fascinating work that he's doing, him and his team. So what's on your vision board right now? What are you trying to manifest?
Yeah, so vision board is to finish my book by the end of the year.
Okay.
So I, loved my career at QVC, and I could, that's a whole other podcast where we could talk about the adventures of, being a QVC host, but a full-time job is a full-time job. And that kept me, very occupied on that. So I would love to finish my book by the end of the year. And so that's up there. It's always travel, Paul. Like, I swear, I won't be satisfied until I've covered every square inch of this earth. And so there are always different travel images up there. And I am manifesting being able to, at a moment's notice, just almost walk down the street and be able to see my daughter. We have been on opposite ends of the country for the past several years with her schooling and my work. So things like that. So there you go. You can test me and see to what extent I have manifested all of that before the end of the year. But quick plug as well, the most recent podcast that I released, which will be probably a little less recent when people hear this, but I did do Vision Board 101, a podcast on that. So if anybody is interested in making a blueprint for their future, I've got a great 30-minute tutorial on my podcast.
We'll link to that for sure, obviously. So finally, I like to end the show with pearls of wisdom. So when we go beyond manifestation, law of attraction, I'm sure you've got one or two that you live by or act as your guiding light in life. What would one or two of those be?
Yeah, this is the easy one, was the reason why it was the first quote that I included in my first podcast. And it is from a man who I consider to be my mentor, even though I only met him once for about 3 minutes. It was some of the most incredible minutes of my entire life because he was such a gem, and is the reason why a lot of folks have awakened to the potential that they have in their life, Dr. Wayne Dyer. And you may have seen this quote on social media. Every time I see it, I'm thankful for it. I don't care how cliched it gets because it's true. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's true.
Just a year or two before I left QVC, I tracked him down backstage after he did a sale of Power of Intention or whatever it was. And I had seen him the year prior. He came to Philadelphia to do a lecture for, I think, his Inspiration book tour. So I had an 8x10 glossy photo of him and I in my hand, and I wanted him to sign it. So I ran back there. I was still working there at the time, and went back backstage, and I saw him, and he greeted me, and he promptly signed the photo. And I have the photo to this day framed, but it's not the photo that I cherish. Jennifer, I swear to God, like, this has never happened with me, with any other individual I've met in my life. It was the feeling I got standing next to him for about a minute or two that I take with me. I swear to God, Jen, that man radiated positive energy.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, I felt it in my bones. So it wasn't the autograph. It was, I got hit with some warm, fuzzy, great feeling that day that never left me. And I'm thinking, what the hell just happened? I wanted to say to him, Dr. Dyer, I don't care where you're going, but can I come?
Can I just come along?
Like, I don't care where it is.
Aura is real. And when people are really aligned, I think when people are truly aligned with their purpose, you soak that up in their presence. They fill a room with it. And we've all had that to some extent, either positive or negative, right? You're around somebody and you're like, man, something is off, right? And then you're around somebody and you're like, I'm instantly, all my guards are down with this person. And I think that's how we feel when we're around somebody with no barriers. And they're just filled with gratitude and love. And this gentleman, again, my 3 minutes with him were exactly the same. And I felt like I had received a hug, even though I didn't get a hug yet. It was
Exactly.
a beautiful thing. Yeah, we should all aspire to that.
Yeah, when I hear that name, it's exactly what I think of. And if you can pull that off in life, or you can just leave people with that warm, fuzzy feeling, then
you're a success. That's your legacy.
You're a success, and that's mission accomplished in my book.
That's your legacy.
So where can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so it's on Spotify. It's on YouTube is a great platform. It is a video podcast as well as an audio one. iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, probably all the same places that they can find you. And it's the Phoenix Podcast with Jen Coffey.
Beautiful. We'll link to that. And again, I appreciated going off the beaten path today by not having an entertainment professional with us. But nevertheless, the insight, the perspective, and the wisdom you provided are certainly going to help us here in the community. And Jennifer Coffey, come back and see us again sometime, please.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd be happy to. Thank you for your time, Paul.
Namaste.
Namaste.